values come together.
Hello and welcome. I'm Kriti Mehta and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's start with a check of the top headlines this hour. Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro arrives at the Brooklyn Detention Center in New York following his indictment in the Southern District. The United Kingdom and France have jointly struck a suspected ISIS weapons dump in Syria. Britain's defense ministry said the strikes were to help prevent resurgence of the Daesh terrorist movement. Dozens of Venezuelan and Mexican demonstrators gathered outside the U.S. and Venezuelan embassies in Mexico City, with opposing groups clashing verbally over the political situation in Venezuela following recent U.S. military action. House and Senate Democrats have demanded an immediate briefing on the strikes and arrest of Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela. North Korea's latest missile test has drawn worry from Japan. South Korea, U.S. Indo-Pacific Command says it is monitoring the situation closely. The Constitutional Chamber of Venezuela Supreme Court ordered that Vice President Delcy Rodriguez assume the role of acting president of the country in the absence of Nicolas Maduro. Yemen's southern separatists welcome a call for dialogue by Saudi Arabia to end a recent military escalation, a potential sign that an unusually public confrontation between the kingdom and the UAE may be easing. US President Donald Trump says he was frustrated with Russian President Vladimir Putin over the continued war in Ukraine, repeating that he had initially believed that ending the war would be easy. Alright, US Venezuela's Supreme Court has now appointed Vice President Delcy Rodriguez as the interim leader of the country after the US military seized President Nicolas Maduro. The court's ruling allows Rodriguez to temporarily assume all presidential duties to ensure national stability and defense. Meanwhile, Rodriguez vowed that the government is ready to defend Venezuela after the early morning operation in which Maduro and his wife were taken. She emphasized Venezuela's commitment to protecting its natural resources. Rodriguez also reaffirmed that Maduro remains Venezuela's only president. Let's hear that.
Desde este exigimos la inmediata liberación del presidente Nicolás Maduro y de su esposa Cilia Flores. Único presidente de Venezuela, el presidente Nicolás Maduro. Aquí está el presidente, las retomo. Estamos dispuestos a relaciones de respeto. Estamos dispuestos a relaciones en el marco de la legalidad internacional y de las leyes de la República Bolivariana de Venezuela. Es lo único que aceptaremos para un tipo de relacionamiento. Sabotaje petrolero. Nosotros estamos listos para defender a Venezuela. Nosotros estamos listos para defender nuestros recursos naturales que deben ser para el desarrollo nacional. Hoy el pueblo venezolano.
Alright, joining me in this discussion now is retired Major General Dr. Roger Kochar, who is an international relations expert from New Delhi. Thank you very much, sir, for joining me this morning, and a very good morning to you. What do you think is really happening? Has Trump now assumed that it is Venezuela that's the 51st state of the United States, not Canada, but Venezuela?
Good morning, Kriti. It's a very interesting statement you've made right in the morning. Because Trump has made it very, very clear that he's not going to leave Venezuela in a hurry. And it's very, very obvious from his statements, you can make out that it's not about narco-terrorism, it's more about resources, it's more about oil, it's more about gold, lithium, rare earth materials. Venezuela has almost 60% of the world's oil resources in that country, and it was going the Chinese way in a very, very large manner. And so Russians were also very closely involved with uh, giving them equipment. As a matter of fact, in Caracas airport, the S-300 air defense Russian system was deployed. China had its radars HQ-9s deployed all over Venezuela's uh, critical command and control centers. So I think it's very, very clear now. It's becoming very, very clear that United States had a larger interest in Venezuela. The Monroe Doctrine 2.0 was also amended recently to suit what United States wanted to do, because it becomes a legal document for Trump to carry out this strike. And he has not even consulted the Congress in carrying out, because it was done with the utmost secrecy. I could, if as a military analyst, if I try to understand this entire operation, it has been one of the finest operations
Yeah.
carried out in terms of uh, air power, land power, and sea power, all coordinated, all done in a matter of 30 minutes. Planning would have actually gone into months,
Yeah.
and with precision. And United States is quite used to carrying out these operations. They did it in Panama also some years back when the
Yeah.
president was lifted in a similar manner. Now they have done it here. So the larger question now is for all of us who are trying to analyze the entire issue, what is the forward movement? Because Supreme Court announces the vice president to take over Venezuela, but I don't think United States will permit that because United States wants to govern this entire country themselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they are likely to, we would await the next statement from the United States with regard to your installation of Rodriguez as the new president of Venezuela. So we would like to see that what kind of next strategy the United States would like to adopt, but in no case United States will allow this to happen, because they are now there. They are
Dr. Kochhar, interesting that you are using the word allowed here. Uh, I understand that those are the circumstances right now, but do we agree that what Trump is doing is extrajudicial as per international law is concerned, as per the UN Charter is concerned?
Kriti, one interesting point you just mentioned, that do we agree? Uh, we are nobody actually to agree or disagree with what Trump will uh, decide to do, and even if you look at China, China has disregarded all international laws in the South China Sea. Uh, Spratly Islands, there is a missile base which China uh, has established itself. Parasil Islands, all these areas China has usurped without any legal sanction, because they are a part of somebody else's territory. Uh, China has blatantly entered the exclusive economic zone of Philippines
Yeah.
and tried to stop their vessels in that area. Then who is the one? Which country, which superpower is there today, which is listening to a rule-based order? There is no rule-based order here in this world today. No international laws are being followed. A UN Convention of Laws of Seas, as we actually call it, UNCLOS, is also not being followed by China in the South China Sea. So I think this has become a new normal, I would say that, with world geopolitics. The new normal of world geopolitics is might is right. And they have got total control of the United Nations, because even if Russia and China, who have actually condemned this particular action of the United States, I think they are the only two countries, apart from I think Cuba,
Yeah.
who have condemned this action of the
Yeah,
United
Cuba,
States.
Colombia, Iran,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Because they are affected because they feel that they may be the next.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
that is that a point, that who is going to stop Donald Trump? Is China going to come and fight the battle for Venezuela? Because you see, one important aspect, vulnerability is there. China has invested more than $100 billion in Venezuela.
Right.
Secondly, China's equipment, China's missiles, China's drones, HQ-9 are now in the hands of the Americans, and the
Hmm.
Americans will be able to decipher everything, technology, how the Chinese have actually made these systems. Russian S-300 is also in the hands of the Americans now. So, what stops Americans now in trying to decipher the technology and build a more robust system which can make these systems useless as far as China and Russia are concerned? So, the larger concern of China is that China has betted on the wrong horse. I would say that,
Hmm.
because the
But
entire,
I believe everybody is betting only on the resources of Venezuela, not really the dictators that have come there one after the other.
unfortunately, this guy Maduro has been in charge of Venezuela since 2013,
Hmm. Hmm.
and he has not allowed any free and fair elections to take place.
Yeah.
So if you look at that side of the story, because we are only focusing on one side of the story,
Yeah.
that
Yeah. Yeah.
US interest and all, we also have to look at the way uh, Maduro has become more of a dictator, and elections have been more of a sham. So if you look at that part of it also, I think Trump has studied Venezuela in detail,
Correct.
and he knows that the people of Venezuela would also heave a sigh of relief.
Hmm. Hmm.
Because if he projects a candidate to Venezuela who is more amenable to them, who is more uh, inclined to uh, develop the country in that manner, because in spite of being such a rich country, Venezuela, the kind of development one has seen in Venezuela is not substantial. And secondly, is corruption is rampant there, and these mafias are openly operating, drug cartels. There is absolutely no doubt when
Hmm.
President Trump says that narco terrorism has got an epicenter in Venezuela. It has, because these people have become extra constitutional authorities there,
Hmm.
and they have been running the country like their own fiefdom.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, why Cuba and Colombia are worried, because they have similar structures there. But
Yeah. We'll
one
come back to
advantage.
that point, Dr. Kojar. I will request you to stay on as we come on to news from Cuba as well. But for now, viewers, let's move ahead and tell you that leaders worldwide have reacted now to Maduro's arrest. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer said that he was pleased to see the end of President Nicolas Maduro's rule in Venezuela and wanted a smooth transition to a government that better reflected the will of Venezuelans, adding that he reiterated its support for international law this morning. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, he said that the legal assessment of the US operation in Venezuela is complex and that principles of international law must apply. French President Emmanuel Macron said the transition of power must be peaceful, democratic and respectful of the will of the people of Venezuela. He added that he hoped Gonzalez, the opposition's 2024 presidential candidate, could ensure the transition. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni said that her government believes external military action is not the path to end totalitarian regimes, but that it considers defensive intervention legitimate against hybrid attacks on its security. China has condemned. China said the strikes on Venezuela and the capture of Maduro are not legal. Newly sworn in New York Mayor Zohran Mamdani, who's a communist socialist, he called the attack an act of war and a violation of federal and international law. Also said that it doesn't just affect those abroad, it directly impacts New Yorkers. Then there's statement also coming from former Vice President Kamala Harris of the US. She has also condemned Trump administration's capture of Nicolas Maduro's wife, calling the operation both unlawful and unwise. Zelensky has also weighed in. He's also commented on the strikes. Hear that for yourself.
Ну, як тут відреагувати? Ну, що я можу сказати? Якщо можна, да, так, з диктаторами, ось так, то Сполучені Штати Америки знають, що їм робити далі.
All right, request Dr. Kocher to join me back in the discussion here. Dr. Kocher, very briefly, of course, the reactions from across the world are mixed. Some are in favor, some are against. Also within the US, of course, Democrats are opposing, and some even conservative Republicans are also opposing Trump's actions. We've already had a discussion on this. But what do you think, has US now, with this one action, been able to re-establish its hegemony, not just in the Americas and the Caribbean and that region, but the entire world?
It's a very good question, Kriti, because certain quarters were doubting that the United States doesn't have, still have that capability to dominate any part of the world it wants to. I think the answer is yes.
Yeah.
Because today the United States has demonstrated that it has the military power, it has the technology, it has the intelligence. See, most important of these operations are, these are intelligence-based operations. They were able to map out the entire activity. I think the last more than 2 months, they were monitoring each and every activity of Maduro. You know what he does in the morning, and so where he goes, where are the safe houses, where he's likely to hide. They even had those steel cutters that high-tech equipment to break through those steel walls where he would hide himself in case he went there. So I think this is a larger message to the entire world, and especially to China, because today I feel that America is looking for a reapproachment with Russia, and it no longer considers Russia as a great enemy as such. Even if you look at the national security strategy, which was released a couple of days back by the United States, it looks at China as the main adversary today. So I think this is a larger message to China also, to show that United States has the capability, and if it so desires, it can unleash its potential in any part of the world. So it is also a message for China not to do anything in Taiwan, because the Taiwan question will also come up now, because China will take the analogy that if America can do a Venezuela, we can also do a Taiwan. So that point also has to be taken into account, because in some of the our own circles of discussion, we are also discussing now that would China do a Taiwan on a similar lines as America has done. So because China also has that kind of a capability. So we are looking at that scenario also developing in the near future. But as of now, I think Trump will restrict himself to Venezuela. He's not going to do anything in Iran, though he has made some threatening noises there also. But possibly he has demonstrated to the world that who's in charge of world geopolitics today.
Yeah, sure. Thanks very much. A very interesting, insightful discussion, Dr. Kocher, with you this morning. And with that, viewers, let's also tell you that Cubans have reacted. Cubans in Havana are downplaying fears of a U.S. intervention despite recent comments from U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Rubio had stated that the Cuban government should be concerned, but locals are not worried. The island appears unshaken by these statements, with many dismissing the possibility of foreign action. Let's in fact listen in to what some of the Cubans had to say.
Bueno, siempre ha habido amenaza para Cuba, pero Marco Rubio se pronunció en una ocasión y dijo de que después de Venezuela, Cuba, los cubanos estamos preparados para cualquier cosa, donde sea y a la hora que sea. Ojalá que no tenga que ocurrir eso.
Yo no creo que los americanos vengan para acá. Aquí. Ellos no se van a meter ahí. Eso pienso yo.
Porque el cubano sabe lo que tienen aquí en Cuba. A mí me parece que no. Lo que sí hay muchos que están preocupados por la situación de Venezuela, que no es como Cuba. Pero bueno, tenemos que esperar.
All right, and we now move ahead. Viewers, U.S. President Donald Trump has said that oil embargo on Venezuela remains in force. Trump has also added that he was putting Venezuela under temporary American control after the United States captured Maduro in an audacious raid and whisked him to New York to face drug trafficking charges. Let's hear that statement.
Well, we're going to be running it with a group, and we're going to make sure it's run properly. We're going to rebuild the oil infrastructure, which will cost billions of dollars. It'll be paid for by the oil companies directly. They will be reimbursed for what they're doing, but it's going to be paid, and we're going to get the oil flowing the way it should be.
All right, I'm now joined in by Dr. Bonnie Yushi Liao, who's Assistant Professor of Diplomacy and International Relations at Tamkang University in Taiwan. Dr. Liao, thank you very much for joining me in this discussion. Of course, we also, everything that's been happening since yesterday, Trump, of course, gone on to attack Venezuela. Some are also saying it's a message to China that it should not interfere on the Taiwan question. What would you say to that?
Not sure about your question, because the question you sent me isn't about this.
Would you want to take that question anyway?
No.
All right. So what do you think Trump means by U.S. running Venezuela?
By running, when President Donald Trump talks about the United States running Venezuela during transition, I don't think this should be understood literally in the sense of direct governance or administration. More likely, he's referring to the U.S. playing a leading or coordinating role, using tools like sanction, diplomatic pressure, political recognition, and working with partners to influence how a transition unfolds. That said, the wording does raise some natural questions. Venezuela is a sovereign state, and in international practice, transitions are usually led internally, sometimes with international support, but not externally managed by a single country. So this sounds more like political signaling than a clearly defined institutional plan.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Liao, for joining me then in this discussion. That's all the time that we have, unfortunately. Moving ahead, viewers, let's also tell you that U.S. President Donald Trump has said that his Colombian counterpart, Gustavo Petro, with whom he has sparred in recent months, should watch his ass after the U.S. military operations to seize Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. Let's listen in to that statement.
Well, he has cocaine mills. He has factories where he makes cocaine. And yeah, I think I stick by my first statement. He's making cocaine. They're sending it into the United States. So he does have to watch it.
Meanwhile, the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who is a longtime foe of Cuba's communist leadership, has issued a warning to Havana after U.S. forces ousted Colombia's ally Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela. Rubio has said that if he lived in Havana and he was in the government, he'd be concerned at least a little bit. Alright viewers, with that it's a wrap on this edition of the World Report. But before we do that, there's some more news from Ukraine that we'd leave you with. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has said that security guarantees and post-war reconstruction will be central to upcoming talks in Europe. His remarks come as Ukrainian and allied military representatives prepare to meet in Paris for key discussions. Zelensky said the focus will be on long-term security arrangements for Ukraine alongside plans to rebuild the country after years of war. The Paris meeting is expected to bring together senior military officials from partner nations as Kyiv pushes for stronger commitments from its allies amid continued fighting with Russia.
Завтра виїжджають до Європи представники генеральних штабів, начальники генеральних штабів і представники інших країн мілітарі-сектору. І це буде добу, вони будуть працювати у Франції, в Парижі. Після цього буде зустріч лідерів, будуть доопрацьовані безпекові документи. Лідери будуть проговорювати багато різних питань, але фокус на гарантіях безпеки та на відновленні. Упродовж цих зустрічей будуть зустрічі з командою президента Трампа, також ці зустрічі будуть в Парижі. Вони будуть добу, а може 2 доби. Подивимось, як піде справа. І після цього, я думаю, що ми будемо готуватись до зустрічі в Сполучених Штатах Америки на рівні лідерів в широкому колі. Ми хотіли б, щоб все це сталося впродовж січня, до кінця січня. Передусім, на які компроміси готова Росія – дуже складне запитання. Ми бачимо по їх діях, чи готові вони, в принципі, на компроміс. Сьогодні, коли ми говоримо щодо плану, який був 28 пунктів, ми ділилися детально з президентом Трампом нашими думками на останній зустрічі в Мар-а-Лаго. Його команда вважає, що Путін готовий до компромісів. І слідством цього є зміни пунктів з 28 до 20. Я тут не повністю.
Alright viewers, that's all we have time for. Thanks for watching NewsX World. For all international news and updates.